From artificial intelligence to blockchain and even decentralized finance, emerging technologies are no longer buzzwords. They are tools that, if harnessed correctly, could help Africa solve some of its biggest challenges, whether it's access to healthcare, education, or inclusive economic opportunities. But the question is, how do we move from potential to progress? And how do we ensure that these tools are shaped by African realities, African innovation, and even African leadership? Joining me on the program this week is someone right at the heart of this conversation, James Sarichera, co-founder of Afric.info. Let's dive in. Thank you so much, James Sarichera, co-founder of Afric.info, for joining us on Tech Trends. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Olemi. It's great to be here.
Now, James, Africa is at a turning point in its digital journey, and there's a lot of talk about it, taking charge of its own future. From where you sit, what do you think needs to be in place for that to happen? Are we talking about better skills, stronger infrastructure, or even smarter policies?
Thanks, Olemi. Well, we're living in probably the greatest opportunity in the last century for Africa to close its development gap. And AI provides that opportunity. And so the key things that we need to do and do with a matter of urgency are really three things. One, we need to look at compute, our data center infrastructure and the surrounding supporting infrastructure for that. We need to look at not just centralized data centers, but also computing that is at the edge that can be used in remote places, in farms. Secondly, talent. We need the very best Africans, the very best minds that we have on the continent working together. This also includes those that are in diaspora, but also collaborating with some of the best minds generally across the world. There's implications as well for our education system. We need to be embedding AI into every level of education from grade 0 right through to tertiary level. And lastly, but actually probably most importantly, we need the power, because without clean energy to actually drive this revolution, then we can't do any of the other things.
Now, James, let's assume that those foundations you've mentioned are in place. Technologies like artificial intelligence, which is often mentioned as a game changer, become real tools for change. What does that now mean for Africa? I mean, how do you see AI helping solve some of the continent's biggest challenges?
Well, I think AI is more than just a game changer. COVID taught the continent a really harsh lesson. When push comes to shove, you're on your own. And so what we need to do is to build our capabilities here using this new technology, so we are able to create cures that we derive from our ecology that can address not only ailments here, but ailments from around the world. But another really important area is food sovereignty. And feeding the nation is usually most countries' biggest bill, and quite often the source of a lot of the debt that we see across the continent from a national perspective. So us being able to yield more from the same amount of land that we have, and doing it in a way that's ecologically responsible, is something that AI can help us do and accelerate. As I mentioned, education needs to change completely, because you now have a situation where all of the world's knowledge is available in an instant. That's got implications for absolutely everything, including defense. So it's more than a game changer. It's actually an existential priority.
Now, and building on what you just said, and onto the fourth industrial revolution, there's this idea that Africa has the chance to leapfrog our data systems without necessarily having to follow the traditional path. Do you really believe that's possible? And how can technologies like AI and even blockchain help us do that?
Oh, categorically. In fact, when you look at the initial early AI arms race, or generative AI arms race, it was basically an arms race at all costs. And so you had very energy hungry, very water hungry data centers doing the processing. And there's talk as well about the use of untested means of powering these systems, just so that we can get further ahead quicker. But I think coming from behind, it gives you the opportunity to do it better. We can do it more ecologically, using less power, using less water, but doing it in a way that is also more useful. So I don't think we need to aim to have the most powerful AI in the world. We just need to have the most useful.
All right. Well, James, let's talk about something you have, experience in, which is using AI and blockchain to open up access to funding for development projects. Can you tell us briefly, how that works and why an approach like that could be a game changer for finance in Africa?
Well, I think if one speaks to most global investors, when they look at Africa, what they see is risk. And I think the potential for de-risking projects in Africa, and particularly projects that involve the private sector and entrepreneurs, with blockchain and AI, is absolutely transformational. You provide the opportunity for fractional contributions to what can actually be very large projects. You also provide the opportunity for a decentralized approach where multiple people from anywhere in the world can actually come together and make something big happen. So one of the key tenets of blockchain technology, for example, is transparency and everybody being able to see how funds have been funneled. So I think there's a real opportunity for transformational transparency, essentially, in terms of being able to fund projects, but also innovation in terms of how transactions are structured.
I'm talking about transparency that you just mentioned. One of the challenges with digital finance in Africa is trust. Many people are still wary, especially at the grassroots. Now, in your experience, what does it take to build a transparent and inclusive financial systems that everyday people and communities can really believe in?
Well, I think it starts with actually building together from the ground up, and not necessarily coming with a solution that is imposed from the top down. So, for example, with for Africa Day, we're releasing a voting platform that will enable Africans all around the world and also people that want to see progress in Africa to vote on some of the most important renewable energy projects in Africa. But a key difference here, and this is where the technology comes in, is that the people that are closest to it, so people, for example, within 10 kilometers of a project, they actually get an extra weighted vote. They actually get 3 times the voting power, so that local communities on the ground have a genuine say in what's going on around them. So they've got to be part of that picture, and right from the beginning, and not at the end when infrastructure is already going up.
Well, even though the road, to that is still unfolding, one thing is clear, and that's the fact that the tools to build a more inclusive digital future, are already here, and it's up to us to use them for our development. But James, as we look ahead with all of these tools, I mean, AI, machine learning, IoT, blockchain, all these tools are now at our fingertips. What excites you, the most about where Africa is heading with them?
I think Africa can approach these technologies in its own unique way. So, for example, right now you've got less than 0.1% of African languages that are on the internet, and so there's a huge opportunity to actually involve more people in creating solutions. First of all, from an African perspective, but from a global perspective. Not having those languages available actually deprives the rest of the world of an incredible reservoir of indigenous knowledge from many different cultures. So I'm very excited about the application of language and culture and having a much bigger say in terms of the development of the fourth industrial revolution and AI.
Well, thank you so much, James Sarachera, co-founder of Afric.info, for sharing your insights with us on tech trends.
Thank you, Alim.